In January of 2024, North Korea's supreme leader Kim Jong-un gave an order to demolish the Arch of Reunification. This massive monument had stood over the highway in Pyongyang since 2001, physically representing the regime's long-held goal of eventually rejoining the Korean Peninsula. The demolition was accompanied by a severe legal pivot. Kim formally altered the North Korean constitution to explicitly label South Korea as his nation's primary foe and invariable principal enemy. He followed this up by sending the military to cut the physical links between the two countries, as North Korea literally blew up the roads and railway lines constructed during calmer decades to connect the North to the South. These actions systematically dismantled the official national policy of peaceful reunification, erasing an ideology that his own grandfather, Kim Il-sung, put into place over 70 years ago. Highly respected intelligence analysts observing these shifts are issuing stark warnings. They assess that the dictator has made a genuine, strategic decision to prepare for war, making the Korean Peninsula more dangerous today than it has been since 1950. For decades, the geopolitical logic here followed a very strict pattern. With a military basically frozen in time since the Soviet era, Pyongyang knew they could not win a conventional fight against the American-backed South. Their only path to regime survival was diplomacy. So they built up a nuclear weapons program to use as a massive bargaining chip. The goal was to force the United States to the table, offering to trade their nukes in exchange for lifting the crippling economic sanctions that kept their country impoverished. This strategy peaked in February of 2019 at a high-stakes summit in Hanoi, Vietnam, where Kim sat down with then-President Donald Trump to hash out a normalization agreement. The talks quickly broke down on just the second day. The American delegation left early with no agreement in hand, leaving Kim to absorb a massive personal humiliation on the global stage. Letters from Kim later revealed his intense embarrassment at failing to achieve the one goal his regime had pursued since the early 1990s. With the door to American diplomacy firmly shut, Kim gave up on Western normalization altogether. To keep his regime afloat, he needed a new global patron, and the geopolitical landscape was about to provide him with an enormous opportunity. In the summer of 2021, Kim watched the United States pull its military out of Afghanistan in a chaotic matter of months. The rapid collapse of a 20-year American effort signaled to anti-Western leaders that American global dominance was actively retreating. Then, Vladimir Putin launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. As the war dragged on far longer than Moscow anticipated, the inferno on the front lines began relentlessly consuming Russia's reserves of ammunition. Cut off from Western trade, Russia desperately needed a massive rear supply base. North Korea, having spent decades stockpiling compatible Soviet-style artillery, stepped in to fill the void. They began shipping an estimated several million artillery shells directly across their shared border into Russia. Recently, this barter system expanded from munitions to manpower. With roughly 30% of its population serving in some military capacity, North Korea has vast reserves of personnel. Reports now confirm thousands of North Korean soldiers are deploying to Russian soil to support the grinding war effort. By simply emptying out his old warehouses and sending untested troops abroad, Kim is securing the exact type of advanced Russian military technology that the United States spent decades trying to keep out of his hands. We are already seeing the results of this exchange. Recent North Korean rocket launches feature engines powered by low-oxygen kerosene propellant, a hallmark of Russian engineering. This upgrade allowed Pyongyang to deploy their first military spy satellites into orbit. Even more concerning, they recently tested MIRV technology. A single rocket can carry multiple nuclear warheads that split off to hit different targets, making them incredibly difficult for American air defense systems to intercept. But the ultimate prize North Korea wants to extract from Moscow is the technology required to build nuclear-powered submarines. North Korea currently relies on noisy diesel submarines that are easy to track. A nuclear-powered sub operates quietly and never needs to refuel. With that capability, they could keep a submarine hidden indefinitely in the Pacific Ocean, posing a constant, undetected strike threat to the U.S. West Coast. To solidify this exchange, Putin visited Pyongyang in the summer of 2024. The two leaders signed a formal mutual defense pact, legally pledging to defend one another in the event of an attack. This influx of Russian expertise has shifted the military balance in Northeast Asia. North Korea is now integrating advanced delivery systems and satellite surveillance that directly challenge the advanced missile defense networks protecting the United States mainland and its key regional allies. Along with physical hardware, Russia is providing crucial diplomatic cover. Moscow recently used its permanent seat on the UN Security Council to block the oversight of sanctions against North Korea's weapons programs, giving Kim free rein to build out his arsenal. This growing arsenal creates what strategists call a nuclear shadow. It's a psychological shield of deterrence. When an adversary possesses a credible nuclear strike capability, defending nations become highly hesitant to retaliate against them, out of fear that a small conflict will escalate into a nuclear exchange. Operating under this shadow, Kim feels emboldened to execute violent microaggressions. We've seen previews of this before, like in 2010 when North Korea launched a deadly artillery bombardment against the South Korean civilian population on Pyongyang. Today, if North Korean forces decided to occupy a small disputed island, South Korea and the United States would face a terrible dilemma. They would have to weigh the cost of sending in Marines to retake the territory against the terrifying risk of Kim launching a tactical nuclear weapon in response. The calculation has shifted. Pyongyang now has the backing of a major global power and an advanced nuclear deterrent. Their fear of Western retaliation is dropping, pushing the risk of a violent border clash to its highest point in decades. A flashpoint in Korea wouldn't happen in a vacuum. It threatens to spill over into the single most dangerous geopolitical fault line on the map, a potential Chinese invasion of Taiwan. If Beijing launches an assault across the strait, the United States will immediately surge its military assets, drawing heavily on its bases in South Korea and Japan to defend the island, leaving the Korean Peninsula heavily distracted and depleted. In that chaotic scenario, a technologically fortified North Korea would see a rare opening. Backed by Russian logistics and diplomacy, Kim Jong-un would have an immense strategic incentive to strike the South, opening a brutal second front and pinning down American forces. The era of using nuclear weapons as a diplomatic bargaining chip appears to be over. By securing Russian military technology and legal protection at the UN, Kim Jong-un has positioned his regime to act independently of Western pressure. He is no longer negotiating for normalization. He is building the capacity to settle the Korean question on his own terms.